The HOPE probe was designed and developed by the UAE and its knowledge partners at the University of Colorado Boulder, Arizona State University, and the University of California, Berkeley. Will fellowship with global scientists for a common goal lead to new opportunities, collaboration, and growth within the global scientific community? To discuss all this, we're joined now by Dave Brain, Associate Professor in the Department of Astrophysical and Planetary Sciences at the University of Colorado Boulder. Very cool place. He's the Deputy Science Lead for the Emirates Mars mission. Philip Christensen is Professor at the School of Earth and Space Exploration at, Earth and Space Exploration, let me get that right, at Arizona State University. He built the infrared spectrometer, I'm sorry, am I really just stumbling around this? He built the infrared spectrometer instrument in the HOPE probe. Great to have you with us. Noora AlSaeed is a PhD candidate at the University of Colorado Boulder. Outside of her Mars research, Noora is involved in outreach activities in both the UAE and America to help encourage the next generation of Arabs to pursue a career in science. I definitely want to talk about that. And to discuss what this milestone means for the Middle East young scientists, we're joined by Marwa AlAlawi, a recent mechanical engineering graduate of MIT, originally from Bahrain. So happy to have all of you here. I mean, this is really kind of a conversation. Happy we can kind of turn it to, like watching Whoopi Goldberg and Meghan McCain on The View talk about science and space if you want. So anyone can jump in. But let me just start out with Dave in Boulder with your program and being the deputy lead on this space mission. I know, because people have given me some notes, that you're also obsessed with bringing as many young people and students into this, I assume like Noora and others. But can you talk to us about why this mission is so important and how you're linking it to young people today, no matter where they're from?
Sure. Yeah, there are really two components of this mission that pulled me in and got me involved. One is the science, the opportunity to understand the entire Martian atmosphere as a global system, and that's what this probe will do for us and for the community. But the thing that really pulled me in most strongly was the opportunity to grow science and planetary science in a new part of the world, the opportunity to excite students about a topic that I was excited about as a young person growing up, to see that sort of same spark in people's eyes. So I've been really fortunate to be in schools in the UAE and interact with students there, to interact with students like Noora, who you'll hear from in a minute and is amazing. And that's a really fulfilling aspect of this whole program for me.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I like this program. I created this program because I read this study done by BCW about Arab youth, and it interviewed thousands of students, male and female. And what was interesting to me is that science and appreciation for science comes so high, for both genders. And that's why I'm glad I'm here to talk with you all. But let me ask Philip Christensen, and I'm going to work on saying spectrometer. So I hope you'll forgive me. But Philip, tell me about the ASU participation in this basically inquiry into Mars.
So here at ASU, we've been building instruments now on campus for NASA for a while. And we've been engaging with students here on our campus. And when this opportunity came along to broaden that, and as Dave said, reach out to students from around the world, I thought that was just a fantastic opportunity. I think doing science from a university, space exploration from a university, gives you this unique opportunity to engage in those engage students. And this, again, has given us an opportunity to expand that beyond our traditional borders and engage with a lot of students from elsewhere. It's been really
Phil, before
great.
I jump to Noora, can you tell us a little bit more tangibly what students might be connected to with the HOPE Mars probe?
So I think of it as an apprentice program. I learned the craft by watching really talented people. And so these partnerships have allowed us to bring students in and let them work with engineers who have 20, 30 years of experience, and just learn from that participation. There's such a difference between working shoulder to shoulder with someone and learning versus, learning from a book. And so it's been that opportunity to, bring students in touch with the hardware and let them see how it's done and just learn from people who've done it before.
Well, thank you for that. Noora, if I'm pronounced correctly, you, I guess, along with your AU Sharjah professor, this is really cool, started finding places within the region where you could build astronomical observatory sites. Right? I've heard a lot of cool things, but that's very cool. But tell us about your journey into this space, and how do I ask this without stepping on a landmine? Is it becoming a more normalized thing for people like yourself to find their way here, or is this still really, really unique?
So I was actually very lucky to be at the precipice of when the shift in the UAE's vision to invest in science and technology and actually invest in the youth to pursue those fields. But at the time that I was applying to university in my undergrad at American University in Sharjah, there wasn't really much prospects. There wasn't really a job title for someone who wanted to study science, and it was something that was not very common. But within my first year, I was lucky enough to be sort of scouted by my professor for Astronomy 101 class to do a project with him, just like you mentioned, studying where in the Arab region we might be able to build observatories should we choose to do so. So that really got me excited about the research process and just doing science. And when the Emirates Mars mission was announced just a year later, I was ecstatic. I was so happy that I would be able to follow this through and end up doing science in my home turf, in my hometown, and not have to, seek it out elsewhere. So that was, I think now compared to when I was applying to undergrad, there's a lot more opportunities for students who are like me, passionate about science. I mean, that passion has always existed, as Hazza al-Mansouri has talked about. We've always been interested in sciences. It's just the prospects were not there. And today, if you ask any young Emirati what they would like to do, they no longer dismiss science as something that is unachievable, and they know that it is an option for them to go into, which is just awesome. And I'm really excited to see that it's going in that direction.
Noora, I'm going to ask you an unfair question and then I jump to Marwa and ask her an unfair question. I'm excited you're both here, but you now, you've done this work at UC Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder, and you're in there, and you're also exposed to Emirati universities, I assume. So you've seen both sides. I'm just sort of interested as a student, as a young person who's consuming this and making it your life. Do you have any quick reflections on what American universities can do to up their game, or what Emirati universities can do to up their game?
Oh boy. So I'm not really sure that there's too much that is different. So they're both doing amazing things in that there is opportunities for students to get involved in research. At the time, there weren't many opportunities to get involved in research at universities back home, but they are amping it up, and there's more investment into research. I think maybe recruitment of students could be done a bit more, so that you could just get as many students involved as possible and let them know that there are many research opportunities, which MBRC is doing a great job of, but there could be more to be done. And then from the American universities side, I guess I have had the privilege of being involved in the committees at my university, and I would like to see a bit more international collaboration, which again, there is some work on, but that's where you get that unique perspective of how to approach things. And I think Her Excellency Sarah has mentioned this, but having an intercultural and different backgrounds working on the same problem can really help in coming up with new ideas and new ways of problem solving that you otherwise wouldn't have thought of when you only have one culture represented. That's
great. Well, before I jump back to Phil and Dave, I want to get Marwa in this. Marwa, I should say hajime mashite yoroshiku onegaishimasu, because you also speak Japanese, I understand. Extraordinary profile in what you do. And I guess in the area, you specialize in human-machine interaction. I know you're not part of the HOPE Mars probe mission, but you are dedicated to science and furthering that dimension of science. And I'm just trying to understand, essentially, my view of the world is if gravity is moving us there, if young people in the Arab world are going in this direction, we now have, Americans and Israelis and Arab youth studying at universities like Arizona State and UC, University of Colorado Boulder. Is that going there, or do you think there are things that still need to happen to draw people in? As a PhD engineer coming out of MIT, what's your sense? Is everything just right, or do we need to begin doing more to bring young people into these tracks?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for the wonderful question, Steve. So I think currently, at least like nowadays, there are more and more youth from the Arab region that are gravitating towards science and technology, and they're serving as role models for even the younger generation. Especially today with the advent of the internet, you're more exposed to role models than times before. So that really helps. And there are a lot of outreach programs that I'm sure Noora has been part of, and I have been part of as well, where we're endlessly trying to mentor these students and excite them about the opportunities that lie beyond, science and technology. And even during this very exciting time where the UAE is pioneering, the region's entrance into space exploration, I think that puts a lot on the table in terms of aspirations that the youth can have, starting, from very early stages when they're in school, middle school, high school, and so on. Because I think reflecting on when it was the time for me to enter university, the prospects of us dreaming about space maybe were not super high. But I think for today's youth, they can definitely dream and have aspirations as big as joining in the space collaboration that's occurring worldwide.
That's really impressive. Let me go back to Dave and Phil for a minute and just talk about these programs. Dave, not to put you on the spot, I have a friend named Ellen Stofan, you probably know. Of anyone I know, probably next to you, she's the most Mars-obsessed person I know. And she's now running the Air and Space Museum, used to be the chief scientist at NASA, has been a big fan of the Mars Hope probe mission. But I guess as you have kind of gotten into this, I tell people that when I do programs on science, which I care so much about, I sometimes worry that if Galileo were alive today, he still may not be found innocent. He might be found guilty, even though we're at the, still on the edge of so many incredible technological revolutions. It just seems like the technology is changing so much every day. I'm just interested in both from you and Phil, as you work in science and bringing this around, and you're both at universities where you sort of have to communicate this as well broadly. Am I wrong? Is there more robust appreciation for science and what we're doing than I may think? And everything's fine, or do you think we need to work harder to help generate that appreciation inside this country for what you do?
I think we always need to work harder to generate appreciation for science. And I think science is not only a benefit in and of itself, but the scientific way of thinking, the scientific process is something that I think everyone could benefit from engaging in. Phil and I both know Ellen Stofan well, and she's a great advocate for planetary science and space science and exploration. And I think she would make these same points as well. At the same time, when I'm in the classroom, I see nothing but appreciation for science among university students, from non-science majors all the way to those who have signed up to train to be astronomers. These are people that no matter what their interest is in college, appreciate hearing and learning about the kinds of exploration that we undertake, that Noora and Marwa are embarking on now in their careers as well. So I think it's a little bit of both. We can always generate more appreciation, but when you take time to engage with people individually and in small groups, there's already a lot of appreciation there.
I appreciate it. Let me just tell something about Phil here for a minute. He's built 7 science instruments that have flown on NASA's Mars Observer, the Mars Global Surveyor, the Mars Odyssey, Mars Exploration Rover, and if I'm saying it right, which I'm having a problem with these acronyms, OSIRIS, REx missions, and the UAE's HOPE's Mars probe. So you're also a Mars-obsessed guy, Phil, and I would just say to you, one part, when you listen to David for a minute about scientific method, is failing. Things go wrong. Things get screwed up. We worried about putting this event too close, in a way, to the Mars Hope probe going into orbit. But I thought maybe it'd be a good lesson if it didn't work out, because there's different sides to this, and we often don't talk about failure as part of the important dimensions of scientific method. I'd love to know, just how you reflect on that and how you bring your students through it, because I think this is a very important life lesson, particularly for people in the Middle East, because oftentimes there are consequences that are very different there for failure than there are in this country.
That's a very good point. The very first mission you mentioned, Mars Observer, failed. That was the first thing I've been involved with. And I'll be honest and say it's still probably the mission I'm the most proud of, because we tried. For me, exploration is about trying, and science is about experimenting. And we learned from that, and we reflew another mission that followed up on what Mars Observer tried to do. I use that example in all of my undergraduate classes to really stress exactly what you said. Science is about trying, and it's about learning new things and doing hard things you've never done before. And you are going to fail. The character comes when you learn from your failures and you move on. Science is a dynamic thing, and it's about looking for new answers. And I think, not working the first time is an absolute key part of that.
I love that answer, and I'm often most proud of my failure, my biggest flops too, from things I tried. But Marwa, let me just go to you and Noora just real quickly to close this out for a moment and ask you, as you look at that moment that mattered most when you're talking to a lot of young people about what got you hooked on this path, whether it was like Phil just described, something he's most proud of, but it didn't work out, it was an experiment. What was that risk you took that paid off, that got you stuck into this field? Marwa?
I can go first.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to mechanical engineering, at least, the thing that really makes me continue doing it and enjoy doing it is when you work very hard to solve a problem, whether it be in terms of hardware, or even if it's a problem set. But the more that you put into it and then seeing the final result that it's working, and that you had to go through that whole process of, brainstorming and then debugging and trying to figure out what exactly went wrong. I think that whole journey of trying to figure out something and then seeing it come into existence, it gives a lot of satisfaction. And that's basically why I continued on with that path.
And Noora, let me ask you the same question. When you're out, in dry, arid regions looking for spots to look up the world or whatever it may be you're working on now, what was that moment that crystallized to get you involved, that you share with young people? Because I know you're also trying to bring a lot of people into science. So what's the hook you use?
So for me, it's that one moment that when you've done all the hard work, you've done all the research, you've built the models, you've looked at the data, for like a brief minute, 5 minutes, an hour, however long it takes before you tell someone else, you're the only person in the world possibly that knows that bit of information. And that's so exciting. And the more exciting thing is that you get to be the person who shares that information with others. And I get so excited living that moment. And then I love to see others living that moment as well. So I want to share science with everyone so they get to experience this as well.
Well, fascinating discussion. I just really want to thank all of you for the work you do, because I am a kind of space junkie. I like watching what all of you do and the prospects of it, and being involved in the very, very far fringe of it, but trying to put a little spotlight on it. So I want to thank Dave Brain from the University of Colorado Boulder, Philip Christensen from Arizona State University, both incredible universities. Noora AlSaeed from University of Colorado Boulder herself, and Marwa AlAlawi, a recent graduate of MIT. Thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.